Ladies and gentlemen, Tisa tells racial fraud and the problem with pretending to be black. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like two cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. I thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor. Click on what appears to be that little bell notification, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in once again. If you have not subscribed to the channel, ladies and gentlemen, please do. And thank you for joining me on Straight Game TV again. Ladies and gentlemen, we got to get into this. This is a real problem, right? For so long, Tisa tells has been pretending or masquerading as a black woman, if you will. It has come to light that she is not African American. And the other problem is she has been using the N-word rather loosely, and then when confronted, basically saying, no, she was joking. She was using it as a joke, ladies and gentlemen. I need you guys to really pay attention to this. Like I said, because when someone plays dress up in black identity, right, to build up their brand, gain access, or wield credibility, that's not allyship. It's straight up theft, if you will, right? And so when you understand that, we're going to confront this disturbing situation that needs to be put on blast, right? So basically, like I said, Tisa tells racial fraud and the problem with pretending to be black, ladies and gentlemen. So who is Tisa Tells? First and foremost, for months, Tisa Tells has been positioning herself as a bold frontline journalist covering African-American cases, crime, injustice, and courtroom drama. But behind the headlines and live streams lies a disturbing truth. Despite projecting herself as a member of the black community, as she has been doing, it is now confirmed that Tisa Tells is not African American. She is of an Indian or Asian descent with no cultural or ancestral ties to the black experience, ladies and gentlemen. She was questioned about her identity fairly and directly. Her response, she used a racial slur, specifically the N-word, on camera, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, a lot of people have been buying into this bogus presentation of what she has been trying to present as her masquerading as some kind of spearheading some kind of effort for victims of domestic violence and all of these things in reference to the Diddy trial, ladies and gentlemen. But what she has been doing is feeding into old tropes and also using the N-word to demean other black men or African Americans whenever she's been confronted, calling them broke, dusty, N-words, and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. And then when confronted, she brushed it off by saying, she's one of us. One of the most disingenuous things that I've seen thus far. And I need you to let that sink in, ladies and gentlemen. I need you to let that sink in because, like I said, a lot of times we know that our culture is very addicting, right? We know that our culture is very powerful, from the beat of the African drum to the words of the African tongue. We're talking about through Egypt, all out throughout history, medicines, science, you name it, being black and from Africa, whether it's from sub-Saharan Africa or, like I say, going on up to Egypt, Kemet and all of these other things, right? So I need you to let that sink in. Because a lot of times people want the rewards of being black, but they don't want to deal with the disadvantages of being black, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, and this is kind of like what the young lady back a couple of years ago, the racial Dolenzal blueprint. Remember her? And the lady that was wearing the braids and stuff like that, running around with the tan and stuff and saying that she was black and all of those things. We've seen the playbook before with racial Dolenzal, Jessica Krug, right? Individuals who falsely claim black identity to access credibility, opportunity, and platforms, right? But here's where it gets a little bit worse with Tisa, right? When you understand her thing, right? Tisa didn't just lie about who she was, she weaponized the lie. And you gotta understand, like I say, Tisa Tells did not just lie about who she was, she weaponized that lie to insert herself into black grief, trauma, and resistance. You have to understand that. She weaponized the lie to insert herself into black grief, trauma, and resistance. And like I said, I need you to understand that if you hear her talking about the Diddy trial, it was like, oh, women and black women, and as she's speaking, and like I said, she has no experience, a real true experience, what it is and understanding what it is to be a black woman. And the trials and tribulations that real black women on a daily basis, without having to front or fake or act like they're anything other than themselves, go through each and every day, ladies and gentlemen, right? And you have to understand this. When someone pretends to be black, they don't just co-opt our culture, they exploit the pain without enduring the consequences. You see what I'm saying? So she's exploiting all of this. She hasn't endured any of the consequences of being black. None of them. Zero. Right? Zero. She stood in the middle of New York City with a gate around her with 2 bodyguards and continue to pose as if she was talking about or representing women who have been through certain types of abuse and things of that nature, and namely African American women, or like she was representing Cassie and so on and so forth, right? But ladies and gentlemen, to exploit the pain without enduring any of the consequences, ladies and gentlemen, of actually being African American, and then run out and use the N-word so loosely, just so loosely and casually, and then when confronted, you know what? I was just joking. I'm one of us, right? When that's simply not true, ladies and gentlemen, right? So like I said, and yet somehow Tisa is being celebrated by some viewers. She's being celebrated, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, once again, you have to understand what this is and what this really is about. Like I said, Dave Chappelle had spoke on this before. And Dave Chappelle said that he was offended, right? That's like, Eminem going to the BET Awards, what Dave Chappelle said, and Eminem going to the BET Awards, and they had an award for Nigga of the Year. And it said that the BET Awards said, and the Nigga of the Year is Eminem. It would be a slap in the face based on the fact that black people have been enduring that degrading word, like I said, when it had the negative connotation, until Tupac added his flavor to it, till we flipped it and made it into a positive thing amongst the communications between African American brothers and sisters, right? Usually when it first started off, it meant something demeaning. And so when Tisa Tells used that word, she means it to be demeaning, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a term of endearment at all. We have to understand that, right? And so let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, because you got to understand where I'm coming from, man. What if it were Jamila Jamil? The actress Jamila Jamil? What if it was her, right? Let's talk resemblance. for a minute. You know what I mean? Tisa tells look strikingly similar to the actress Jamila Jamil. The same eyes, nose, hair texture, skin tone. They could be sisters if you know who Jamila Jamil is. She's an actress, right? Now imagine this. I want you to imagine this. And this is how sometimes they prop up some people and then they tear down others. And it's selective. It's like the justice system. And, the selective prosecution. Who we going to hold accountable this week versus, you know what, we really ain't worrying about that, And so imagine this. If Jamila Jamil, a Pakistani Indian actress, got on IG Live and used the N-word, claiming it was just a joke or that she was one of us, right? Would she survive that? You got to really, truly, honestly ask yourself that question, right? Would cancel culture give her a pass? No. The internet, basically, as it's done to so many other people, selectively, whenever they want to select, whoever they want to select, right? They would basically shred her. They would shred her. So you got to ask yourself, so why is Tisa Tells, a virtual unknown before this, being defended, praised, or even platformed after doing exactly that? Nobody called, from what I understood when I heard her said that Diddy wouldn't invite some guy to his private parts. He didn't call her any kind of name. He just basically said that she was lying and where was the RICO and all of that. And then she really got beside herself and got indignant and very disrespectful. So I'm going to ask again. So why is Tisa Tells a virtual unknown, ladies and gentlemen, right? Seemed like she being propped up by somebody, right? A virtual unknown before this, being defended, praised, or even platformed after doing exactly that, and she's not Black or African American. So she can go and use that word casually now, disrespect and degrade people. You got to ask yourself that question, ladies and gentlemen. You got to ask yourself that question. So I got to ask you this. So where's the outrage now? Where's the outrage? Nobody saying nothing? Nobody cares about it? Like I said, once again, a lot of people have been trying to embrace her. Listen, I want you to understand something. And this goes into when I say, the lie and proving the lie, right? The courthouse lie, disinformation in real time, ladies and gentlemen. Or should I say the courthouse lies and disinformation in real time that Tisa Tells was giving out. And when confronted with that is when she started to hurl the N-word slurs and so on and so forth. Right? You got to understand that. This is only straight game TV. We only going to do it straight, no chaser, ladies and gentlemen. We only going to do it like that. And listen, and just when you think it couldn't get worse, Tisa, listen, falsely claimed that the U.S. Marshals put the courthouse on lockdown because of her. Ladies and gentlemen, did you hear what I just said? During the Diddy trial, right? Tisa Tells falsely claimed that the U.S. Marshals put the courthouse on lockdown, because of her. That she caused the security escalation, if you will. Right? Once again, wanting to be more important to the situation than one actually is. Right? Tisa Tells, yes, falsely claimed that the U.S. Marshals put the courthouse on lockdown because of her during the Diddy verdict, ladies and gentlemen. Right? That she caused the security escalation, ladies and gentlemen. It had nothing to do with Diddy, his high profile, the verdict, none of those things. It was because of her, basically, is what she said, right? Ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear. That's a flat out lie. That was a flat out lie, ladies and gentlemen, right? Footage from Oda on Go shows exactly what caused the disruption. Despite Tisa Tells saying that, somebody else footage, right, from Oda on Go shows exactly what caused the disruption. A woman in the crowd had her bare chest oiled up in public, and law enforcement stepped in to manage the chaos, ladies and gentlemen. But Tissa Tells wanted to steal that joy or that attention and try to make it seems as if it was about her. Once again, falsely boosting any kind of credibility that she thinks that she may have. Listen, but Tissa Tells twisted the narrative to insert herself as the antagonist, ladies and gentlemen, or should I say protagonist, ladies and gentlemen, in a story that had nothing to do with her. Absolutely, positively nothing to do with her. That's not journalism. That's narcissism. So are we dealing with a narcissist? That it has to be about me, 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 me? And it seems that way because you got to understand something. When the verdict didn't come out like Tissa Tells was selling it, you know, being the narcissist that she is, when the verdict did not come out like she thought it should, she began to call the jury stupid, uneducated people. That's why they pick these dumb people, and so on and so on and so forth, right? You know, Diddy's lawyers, they're cheating, they're doing this, they're doing that. All of these other accusations that were not accurate based on the fact that the narrative that she was pushing did not come to fruition. So now it was degrade, condemn, name call, and be petty as possible because that's the only place that she could go at that particular time. I need you to understand what we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. I need to understand, come in here, sit down, shut the door. I got something to tell you. No. There's nothing really going on, ladies and gentlemen. Like I just told you just now. That was not about Tissa Tells. That was about a woman in the crowd who had her bare chest oiled up in public, and law enforcement stepped in to manage the chaos, ladies and gentlemen. But Tissa Tells twisted the narrative to insert herself as the protagonist in a story that had nothing to do with her. Absolutely, positively nothing to do with her. That's not journalist, ladies. That's not a journalist, ladies and gentlemen. That's a narcissist. That's somebody who wants it to be about them at all costs. It has to be about me. If it ain't about me, it ain't about nothing. That's basically what she's saying. You understand what I'm saying? And that's a common thread and theme that she pushes, if you will, right? And I want you to understand why this video matters and why what I'm talking about really, truly, honestly matters. Why this matters in the deeper harm that it might do, when you think about the big picture. This big picture, people here, right? The situation isn't just messy, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. And here's why. Like I said, when you dealing with somebody like this and who probably doesn't even deal with African Americans on a daily basis, if you will. False identity for credibility, ladies and gentlemen. Did you hear that? False identity for credibility. It would be as if I was acting as if I was white. You know what I mean? And trying to give them false identity because I may have been on the lighter side of Sears, if you want to call it that, right? And so, once again, like I said, false identity for credibility. Pretending to be black give Tissa a voice she didn't earn. Once again, pretending to be black gives Tissa Tells a voice she didn't earn. She exploited the weight of our lived experience. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, because she does this all. She's exploiting the weight of our lived experience to speak on behalf of our communities. And she really, truly, honestly knows nothing about it, because if you understand, the first word that she goes to when she's criticized or confronted is to call somebody these dusty N-words and calling men, bitches and so on and so forth, like I said. And she just gets beside herself, ladies and gentlemen. And another thing, like I said, once again, the use of the N-word casually, if you will, right? Or should I say the casual use of the N-word, if you will. Her use of the N-word as a joke is disgusting. It's disgusting. Like I said, once again, it's disgusting. We know people who get online of African descent or African American, right? And they speak, like I said, from the culture, hip hop or whatever have you, right? usually get a pass. That's, the way certain people deal with things. They can't be mad. But like I said, when it comes from someone like Tissa Tells, who's masquerading as a black person, but truly is not, it's an insult. It's disgusting, ladies and gentlemen. It's disgusting, right? So her use of the N-word basically is appalling. The word carries centuries of pain, resistance, and reclamation, right? Reclamation, I'm sorry. And you don't get to use it because you feel black today. I feel like I'm black today. Let me casually call somebody, the N-word or whatever, right? So once again, we have to understand that from the bigger point of what I'm saying today. Simple and plain. Just out here, just calling people, and like I said, and then when confronted, it was a joke. I'm one of y'all, basically. I'm one of us. You know what I mean? I'm one of y'all. Like how, right? And we don't know who she is or where she comes from that perspective. Usually, when you understand, and people that work hard, to like either stop African Americans for even trying to use it amongst themselves in rap songs and so on and so forth. But like I said, we consider it, me understanding it, the Tupac narrative, never ignorant, getting goals accomplished, right? But she's not talking about the NIGGA. She's talking about the NIGGER, and she's using it in a demeaning way, right? In a reclamation way, right? So listen, I need you to understand this, or possibly because she feel black today. Her girlfriend, with that fake relation and how she's doing what she's doing, right? And you got to understand now the erosion of trust in the journalism, right? Like, and we could start with the mainstream media with this one. I mean, how they sold the Diddy trial, it was, oh my God, they didn't basically want to break down nothing. It was hell on wheels. It was, the RICO Act, and he could face this, that, and the other. There was no investigation as to what they were reporting or anything, right? And so now, the allegations were reported, and Westmoreland, his attorney, after the verdict, came out and said something very important. She said, I know the media focused on the aspect of the allegations and what they thought would happen and so on. She said, I would ask them to use that same amount of energy that they put into actually reporting the allegations and all that they thought was going to happen. Use that same amount of energy now that Mr. Combs was acquitted of the most serious charges and only convicted of the Mann Act, ladies and gentlemen, which basically, like I said, once again, is the same as tricking, buying a woman something or, spending money on a woman for prostitution or whatever, engaging in prostitution, if you whatever, right? So you got to understand that when people like Tissa Tells, like her, get exposed, it totally discredit African American journalism, if you will, right? Think about that for a minute. I want you to think about that one. When people like Tissa Tells gets exposed, right, and them thinking that she's black, right, it discredits true black journalists. You got to understand that. You got to understand that for what that is, man. When she's saying what she's saying, and then you catch her in these lies, right? People are gonna ask, like, well, damn, they looking at us all the same. You know what I mean? When we winning, they want to separate that one winning person, from the rest of the people. But when we losing, then they want to couple us all in together. You understand what I'm saying? See, if it's something negative, we get coupled all in together. When it's Serena Williams winning the Wimbledon 5 times, oh, that's just Serena. You know what I mean? But if it's something else negative, those people are just X, Y, and Z. And this is not how everybody looks, but a lot of people like to do that because it makes them feel better about who they're not, right? Or who they haven't become, or the goals that they haven't accomplished, if you will, right? And so it makes black journalists doing the real work and makes our community wary of who to trust, right? It makes our community weary of who you can trust and who words you can take for it. That's why, like I said, for the most people who watched straight game TV, when we were, going over the Diddy trial, we were just going over the gavel to gavel coverage. Shout out to Inner City Press, like I said, and updates of Diddy trial. Like I said, so when we were doing it, we didn't need a notebook. We didn't need to write down no notes. We were reporting actually what was being said as it was being said inside of the courtroom, as put forward by Inner City Press, ladies and gentlemen. When Tisa Tells would come out there, she would come out there with her little notebook and just go on this tangent that was just unreal, ladies and gentlemen. Unreal. And like I said, I just gave you one of the situations and where it was a total lie, in regards to the U.S. Marshals increasing security because of her. She needed it to be about her. Ladies and gentlemen, this is appalling. You understand what I'm saying? This isn't just about race, ladies and gentlemen. I want y'all to understand something. As most people would like to, discredit what I'm about to say or what I'm saying right now. This is not just about race, ladies and gentlemen. It's about ethics. It's about ethics. This is not about race. Like I said, when I first heard Tisa Tells, I had to do a video. You might catch it on my channel. I had to do a video, and I was like, "Oh wow, she's just saying anything." I'm like, "This is what they doing on YouTube?" Like, nah, and it was an outright lie. I was like, "Oh wow," right? Like I said, this is not about race, ladies and gentlemen. This is about ethics. You want to be able to trust the person that you're listening to give you the information that would be helpful to you, right? To be informative, right? To help you make an informed decision as a person, right? And like I said, when you say, okay, cool. But then when you hear these lies and you see these lies and then you see the truth come out, you're like, oh, wow. And it quickly gets dismissed or pushed away, right? So I need you to understand, it's about ethics, power, and exploitation. Get it? Power and exploitation. I need you to understand it. It's about how some people insert themselves into the black struggle to build a brand while avoiding the reality of being black in America. Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Did you hear that? It's about how some people, not everybody, some people insert themselves into the black struggle to build a brand while avoiding the reality of being black in America. That's what this is about, ladies and gentlemen. Tisa Tells is a disgrace. It's a disgrace. Like I said, you can hold her up to be whatever you want her to be to you. And like I said, but the fact of the matter is when you go over the tapes and the things that we've seen on the internet from that perspective, it's appalling, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, and this brings us to the real conversation, right? How do we hold journalists accountable for authentic representation, right? You got to understand that. How, you know what I mean? We got Gabby Phillips. She's on CNN. Love Gabby Phillips, right? And she does a great job of moderating and really trying to get out the truth, like I said, at the end of the day. And there's a few other people out here really doing a great job talking about the truth and the facts of the matter, right? And listen, I want you to understand this also, right? As part of the bigger questions. How can non-black allies support without centering themselves, right? So that's why I say it's not about race. How can non-black people, right, who are allies of the black community, support without centering themselves with one thing or the other and just standing on the side of truth and fact and saying, hey, you know what? This is what it is. Good, bad, or indifferent, because everybody makes mistakes and nobody's perfect, right? But like I said, when Tisa Tells was confronted about the N-word, you know what I mean? She basically laughed it off. It was a joke. I'm one of us. I'm one of us. Huh? Really? That's what they doing nowadays. Listen. And another thing as to the bigger question, what systems are in place to prevent this kind of racial impersonation from happening again? Right? Once again, Tisa Tells is not black. Tisa Tells is not African American, despite masquerading and basically saying, right, specifically the N-word on camera, right, brushed it off by saying, She's one of us. She's one of us, ladies and gentlemen. What does that mean? She's trying to adopt the Kendrick Lamar thing, they not like us. You know what I mean? She want them not to be like us because she is one of us. Is that what she was trying to do? But we not having it, ladies and gentlemen. We simply not having it. And so like I said, I want to be clear, man. I want to be clear. We don't gatekeep pain, right? You know what I mean? As African Americans, ladies and gentlemen, we don't gatekeep pain, but we do protect the truth, or at least we try, or some of us try. Like I say, once again, we do not gatekeep pain, right? But we do protect the truth. And the truth is, Tissa tells, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to understand what the truth. And the truth is, Tissa tells doesn't belong in the space she pretended to occupy. It's point blank, period. Tissa tells does not belong in the space she pretended to occupy, ladies and gentlemen. And that's a fact. Once again, what was wrong with her just coming out and being who she was? Stating where she was from. Why? Because she thought that she might not be accepted, right? Because there's something about being African American. There's something about black culture. There's something about hip hop culture. There's something about who we are as a people, right? As you've seen down at the courtroom, in the courthouse, if you will, right? The people that were down there, whether they supported Diddy or didn't support Diddy, right? People giving their perspective. So like I said, she came in masquerading as an African American and basically brushed it off when she was confronted by saying, basically, she's one of us. Amazing. Amazing. Right? And so, like I said, when you think about the big picture, ladies and gentlemen, black trauma is not a costume. It's not a costume. It's not something that you could put on today, take off later on, go home and with your family and, act like everything's all right and you're different. I was like, oh, wow. She did that. Black identity is not a hustle. You know what I mean? You can't come in, try to hustle, our culture, pretend to be one thing, knowing that you're not that, and then go away and be like, you know what? I got him. No, we can't have that. Like I said, as much pain and degradation and the stuff that our ancestors, our grandmothers, aunties, uncles, great-grandfathers, great-grandmothers, stood tall to represent, as we see each and every person, whether it be Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, all of these people, Arthur Ashe, you name it, black actors, actresses, right? Black inventors, you know what I mean? All of those things when we talk about this, right? So like I say, black identity is not a hustle. And check this out. And no, you don't get a pass because you vibe with the culture, right? No. You don't get a pass because you vibe with the culture, ladies and gentlemen, right? And I need you to understand this. If Tissa Tells wants to be taken seriously, she needs to do whatever real journalist does. You see what I'm saying? You got white journalists out here who really stand on what they stand on. And like I said, whether you like them or don't, you got to appreciate their authenticity. You see what I'm saying? Like I said, you got Asian journalists out here who do what they do. Right? If you like them or don't like them, you got to respect them because they stand on their authenticity, ladies and gentlemen. Right? So like I said, if Tissa Tells wants to be taken seriously, she needs to do what real journalist does. Lead with transparency, integrity, and respect for the community she claims to cover. I'm going to say it one more time, ladies and gentlemen. Did you hear that? If Tissa Tells wants to be taken seriously, she needs to do whatever real journalist does. That's lead with transparency, integrity, and respect for the communities she claims to cover. Until then, we see through it. We see behind that door that you asking everybody to close. Come in, shut the door, sit down. No, we see through that door. Ain't nothing going on behind that door. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that for what that really, truly, honestly is. Like I said once again, your boy DELRAY, ladies and gentlemen, straight game.
Life is like some cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.